Hello and welcome to PBCJ Presents, our weekly current affairs discussion series. It is here that we take a deep dive into matters affecting Jamaica land we love. I am Maya Chung. This week on PBCJ Presents, we present the conclusion of our two-part look at the topic, Is Artificial Intelligence a Threat to Journalism? The Globe observed World Press Freedom Day on May 3rd. The Press Association of Jamaica, PAJ, staged a forum on the issue, ventilating whether or not AI is more menace than value-added tool. The panel for the forum consisted of Jovan Johnson, senior staff reporter at the Gleaner Company, Adrian Dunkley, founder of the Jamaican AI organization Star Apple, Al Edwards, CEO of Our Today, and Dr. Gunjan Mansingh, head of the computing department at the University of the West Indies Mona campus. According to AI company, the effect of artificial intelligence on journalism, for it to be positive, should see a heavy focus on using AI to spread truth to help humans survive. He added that journalists should use AI to provide better quality content, but people should remember that as at now, AI needs humans to give it material to do the things both good and bad that are concerning today's population.
Journalism can, yes, use AI very importantly, very effectively to do a better job, provide better quality, but at the same time, you still need humans involved in the process. Is there going to be a point in time where you may not need a human involved in journalism? I don't want to be around to find out, because that sounds like a very boring reality, a very boring world, because we rely on journalists to present us with not just the news and facts, but in a way that we can ingest it effectively. We rely on them to not think for us, but inspire us to think about things that we wouldn't necessarily have thought about. So who really is responsible for us thinking about the importance of toxins in our water? A journalist came to you and said, I think this is important. When you rely specifically on a machine to do that, the machine is now controlling you instead of an individual deciding this may be important to you. And the big thing is, as amazing as these tools are, it doesn't know what a human is, it doesn't know what oxygen is, it doesn't know what a limited lifespan is. It's imitating us. It's learning from us. So it's kind of like our kid, in a sense, right? It's not doing anything unique exactly. It's learning from us and trying to replicate the things that we do on a regular basis. So yes, it may be able to imitate us sometimes, or if you ask it to write a song in the style of Miss Lou, it'll kind of do it. But Miss Lou would have went through a progression. She may not have written the same way when she was older versus when she was younger. Those types of things can't necessarily factor in right now. You need somebody to go in and tell it these things. Every step it takes involves a human getting the data, a human deciding how the data should be used, and then to some extent a human deciding if it's correct or not, right? So it's very limited right now in terms of fact checking, but we're going to get to a point where there's a chat truth GPT that checks chat GPT for it and verifies it. We're not there yet, right? But there's definitely value involved in it, but really think about the next generation and how they're going to interact with these tools and how easy it is for us to affect the reality with the tools. And I think that's why we definitely need human journalists involved at every step of the way. I'm not going to say every journalist is going to have a job in the next 15 years. I won't say that. But I believe this is more a push to improve the quality and their capabilities, and they can use it to be more effective and better at what they're doing. Imagine all of the crazy internet trends. I could not have predicted. I'm not sure if a human could have realized that these things would have made sense to do. So think about next generation and how you would feel if your best friend turned out to be ChatGPT.
Meanwhile, senior staff reporter at the Gleaner Company, Jovan Johnson, in expressing his points, stated a concern about misdirection. Jamaica is already using AI as chatbots, he said, were used to assist the media during champs and also to help healthcare workers during the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic in the years 2020 and 2021.
Journalism is accustomed to and thrives on technological change. We're talking about from the printing press and other kinds of technologies that come up. When I was at Carimac back in between 2009 and 12, one of the debates we had was media convergence, for example. And is print journalism going to die? Now, there are questions about the medium through which we access information, but journalism did not die. Print journalism, as we classically know it, has not died. What we have to do as journalists is to adapt to the technology or adopt the technology using our fundamental principles as journalists. So issues of truth, issues of verification, fairness, those are critical. And once we agree that those will remain fundamental pillars of journalism and its purpose in society, then anything else that comes after that, including AI, artificial intelligence, or artificial generative intelligence. I learned a lot of things preparing for this, by the way. So there's artificial narrow intelligence, and there's artificial generative intelligence. Whatever it is that comes, once the fundamental pillars remain the same, then they will just have to adopt. No, this does not downplay the ethical issues that will arise. Every technological change over time introduces problems and challenges that we have to respond to. So 20 years ago, most media companies did not have social media policies. Most media companies now do have social media policies. It's the very same thing when we talk about artificial intelligence, that the news organizations, media entities, whatever they are, that are involved in the production of content and sharing of content, will have to introduce structures to ensure that the fundamentals of journalism, as I mentioned earlier, remain, but at the same time, the technology is incorporated to streamline the process. And there are three ways I would love you to look at this in terms of the news-making process. News gathering. How can the technology improve our news gathering elements? A lot of my colleagues here, panelists, colleagues, and some of you know that we collect information through interviews, we search archives, whatever it is. A lot of it mundane, I can tell you that. As a practicing journalist, it can be annoying, it's very time consuming, and these kinds of rote activities can be left up to the technology, with guidance, of course. And then we go to the news production process. When we have collected the information, how do we edit it, putting it together, storyboards for video content, whatever it is, and then we go to news distribution. Those are the three elements that we have to look at, both as journalists and as media managers, owners of media and so on. How do we integrate artificial intelligence girded by the principles that guide journalism to ensure that we are maximizing these? We are ensuring that, well, we're in 2023, so the audience is far more segmented. They are demanding more information that satisfies their particular interests. It's of a sort of particularized information and content consumption. And media, news media, journalists, whomever, all of us, we have to be able to respond to that. And we can use the technology to do that. Now, some of the ethical issues I want to point out, which are very important in addressing: data bias, algorithm bias. I think Dr. Mansingh spoke about the information does not come out of thin air. It comes from somewhere. The information that is generated, the question you ask in GPT, for example, it comes from somewhere. The question we have to ask ourselves is, when we put the questions in or we tailor whatever the technology is and get the information, how do we assess it to ensure that it is fair, that we are not excluding particular social groups, underrepresented groups? Because the information, the source of that particular information may be from somebody who, or an entity, or a place, or space, that that did not give consideration to particular groups of people, to particular kinds of issues. But it comes from somewhere, and in it are biases, and we have to be careful to ensure that those are reduced. Disclosure issues, that's very important, and I've spoken to colleagues in Jamaica and in the Caribbean and some in parts of Europe and North America. When a question is put into, I'm using chat GPT, and you ask them to, give you an essay or whatever it is you ask them, who owns the information, Dr. Mansing asked. Journalists, a lot of it comes from the work of journalists, but journalists are not paid for that information. The media organizations are not paid for that kind of information. Very important. But we don't get a reference list when we use ChatGPT. Perhaps if you ask, I don't know what, I didn't try that aspect of it. And those are very important issues, copyright issues, I should say. The disclosure aspect relates to what extent does a media house tell its audience, its readers, viewers, whomever, that the information that is being presented to you came from automation. That's critical, because we don't know what role it may play to our audience, but we know that we're not the sole source of that information. Some media organizations include that in their disclosures. Some do not. And those issues also have to be interrogated. And of course, the issues of accuracy and verification. One thing I'll also mention before I go to one final issue, inequalities. And I know George will come to that, because he and I had a sort of a robust discussion about the issues of inequalities that are introduced when it comes to media houses and newsmaking processes. The big media houses, the small media houses. And when you look at issues of costs, finance, being able to scale up, being able to have the skill. So in one sense, we're saying it will introduce efficiencies. So the rote aspects of journalism, news gathering, whatever it is, those aspects can be dealt with. But what is the capacity of a small media house? In one sense, it may work. They're able to get the journalists to go on to major things by having the technology do the rote aspect of the work. But then what is introduced is a requirement now to go beyond what ChatGPT or whichever AI technology gives you. So if you get the basics of an earnings report, George, if you get the basics of an earnings report, you plug Grace Kennedy's earnings report into the ChatGPT and say, give us a report, and they string together something very quickly and give it to you. What's the story behind that? What are the shifts? What are the issues? Getting the analyses, the perspectives. When people get up and read the Financial Times, they already know what whichever Fortune 500 company or whichever has already released. What people want are analyses that are mixing historical information with what you are able to unearth about a particular earning. And those are important things. And to what extent can a small media entity engage with that? And then, when you tie it with big tech and the commandeering of AI skills and technologies, then how are small entities able to compete, to retain the kind of talent, to continue to build their AI technologies? That's a challenge for small media houses. Maybe major ones are able to navigate to a certain extent, but it's a challenge that has to be met. And one last thing. I did a sort of an unrepresentative poll of my colleagues, media houses in coming here. To what extent are they using AI? How is it fitting in their newsmaking processes? And remember I said the newsmaking processes, you're talking about news gathering, news production, and news distribution. And for the most part, there are discussions taking place within the newsrooms, within the management, about how these technologies can be used or incorporated or adopted to improve the workflows in media houses. I'm at the Gleaner, so maybe I can give you a little bit about what we're doing. Not very much, because right now we know that we are currently engaging in a pilot project with aspects of our editorial department and Star Apple to see how we can use the technology. We did two things though. At Champs the other day, which is the high school track and field championships in Jamaica, our colleagues on the social media desk, integration desk, experimented with using AIs to form captions. Because the races are very quick, so you're trying to reduce your time to have to post an update and so on, and you're in a competitive environment. It wasn't perfect, but it was an effort. And I also learned that we have been using chatbots, etc., that we perhaps never considered AIs, before, but are artificial intelligence technologies throughout COVID at the Gleaner, and I didn't realize that. So when you go on our website, you're able to put in and ask for basic information, and the information is generated, what's the latest statistics.
We take a break on PBCJ Presents. More on artificial intelligence when we come back. Speaking from the point of both veteran journalist and business owner, Al Edwards, CEO of Our Today, said AI enables him to focus on just variable costs, which make his entity able to have a higher profit margin.
Artificial intelligence, a threat to journalism. That in itself is a conundrum. The central tenet of journalism is truth, human truth, but yet that truth is disseminated by something artificial. Think about that for a minute. So it strikes at the heart of what we do as journalists. But at the same time, if you think about it, we didn't stick to the quill in the era of the typewriter. Neither did we cling to the typewriter in the era of laptops and desktop computing. The inexorable march of technology and humanity moves on. But there are some lessons we have to learn. Over the last quarter of a century, I think social media had a debilitating impact on journalism. In newsrooms today, a lot of journalists, particularly younger people who grew up in the era of the social media, their reference point is social media. Case in point, I don't know if anyone saw a story this week where a young lady literally decimated a business, South Avenue Grill. Anybody saw that story? Right. And what prevailed? Ultimately, the truth. That's what prevailed, right? So we have to really address this. What is real? What is journalism? What makes a good writer? And that's essential. Now, also, I don't know if anybody had the opportunity to see an AI-generated interview with Joe Rogan and Donald Trump. Did anyone see that? But now, think about the consequences and ramifications of that. Say, for instance, in Jamaica, you had something generated with an interview with Andrew Holness, or for some matter, a business leader, Michael Lee Chen, and they turned around and said, hey, I never said that. What does that mean for media houses? Do media houses face lawsuits? So, in the advent of artificial intelligence, we will have to redefine our libel laws. What does that mean? How do we go about our business? As it pertains today, some of the major media houses, for instance, the BBC, they have an AI platform called Juicer. Bloomberg has something called Cyborg. IBM has something which can do opinion pieces called Project Debater. Phenomenal technology. But that, as Jovan said, that technology has to be undergirded by the way we manage that technology. How do we use it? What are we trying to accomplish? In a Jamaican perspective, one of the things I fear is that we will naturally go to say we want to reduce our fixed costs, right? So when I started out, we had a newsroom of about 80 to 100, 120 people on occasion. That would be, today, that's cannot be considered. We're facing reduced advertising revenue, operating costs are higher. It's a shrinking business we're in. Some of us in the business want to see journalists prosper. We do not want to see, we want to see young people come in, join the profession. Right? Make a career of it. Base your life around it. Prosper from it. And it's something that we haven't done very well. And we need to do that well. So on the one hand, as I said, it's a conundrum. On the one hand, We need tools to make it a better profession. At the same time, we don't want to hurt ourselves. We don't want AI to really decimate the business. We've seen it. We've seen it with social media. What is truth? We've seen the impact of that. Elections. We live in an age now where a president will say to you, hey, the election was stolen from me. You can put out any information. That information can be manipulated. Now, it's often said that a great editor has the ability to sort the wheat from the chaff. That skill is going to be called upon even more so now with the advent of AI. Because you have to sort it out. You have to be able to decide what is real and what is not. And a real editor is going to look for some soul from his writers. Yeah, you're going to be looking for the soul of the writer, which is a human experience. If a young reporter comes to you and gives you copy, and you could tell straight away, hey, that's really you. And you don't want it to be a reflexive nature where, oh, I'm going to put it through ChatGPT, or I'm going to run it through a software. You're really looking for unique content. That's what you're ultimately looking for, both as editors and as media operators. And that's your unique selling point, because at the end of the day, it's still a business. You have to sell content, and you have to demarcate yourself from the competition. So you have to figure that out. So I would posit that AI is a tool to be used. But George mentioned earlier on about the movie AI. I'm probably a little bit older. I can go far back as to 2001: A Space Odyssey. One of the things that was really fearful, the two movies that really brought out fear in me as a young boy was The Exorcist and that movie. There's a scene in there where there's a computer called HAL. And there's an astronaut, and the astronaut says to HAL, open the pod door. There's no response for a minute. And HAL says to him, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. Couldn't control it, right? And it was a point made earlier this week by Jeffrey Hinton, when he says, it's a threat to humanity if you have things smarter than you, threatening your existence. So there are things that we have to put in place. We have, as Jovan said, we have to put in guardrails, but we have to use it effectively. As I said, one of my greatest fears in Jamaica is we don't want it to harm the industry. We want to encourage the next generation of media practitioners, journalists, and we want to make them thrive. We don't want to see the industry contract as a result of AI, because it's a business. And media owners will say, well, why do I need 20 reporters when I can have 6 with AI software? Think about it. Because business dictates, always. We're talking about earnings reports, shareholders. They're all looking for that.
There's no death knell to journalism here. There's no death knell to journalism. As I said before, technological change, journalism thrives on technological change. And once the fundamentals are bolstered and remain as the basis of fact-checking, verification, truth, fairness, then everything else will have to fall in line to that. It will enhance, if used appropriately, the work of journalists.
But despite Johnson's optimism, PAJ director and journalist George Davis says that he has seen the outflow of AI destroying media houses and, by extension, journalists' jobs.
I saw dying in journalism firsthand in October 2008. Was that the election when Obama beat Romney? 2008, yes, November 2008. Right, so I was in the US covering the election build-up period. And we did a tour of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Huge operation. So I wanted to picture a building as big as the Gleaner Company's building on North Street. That's what the Philadelphia Inquirer occupied. And I wanted to keep the Gleaner building in your mind and imagine staff at the Gleaner only on one floor. So there's no concession. I know you have people who are tenants and other things there. Just picture the Gleaner building, but the number of staff can hold on one floor, and they're not even sitting close to each other. There are huge gaps between them. That's what the Philadelphia Inquirer was, and what killed Superman again? The kryptonite to the Superman that was the Philadelphia Inquirer was the internet. And so we were given a tour. We were told by one of the founders that, boy, we had people on each floor. It was a beehive of activity. For those of you who know your U.S. journalism, you know that that's a huge operation in its heyday. It was reduced to people on one floor, spread out, because the internet and what the capabilities were in terms of producing content had made most jobs redundant in the truest sense. So that was how death was represented in that way. So I just put that to stack the question on either side. So death knell, Al, or enhancer?
George, you make an excellent point. I say this is definitely the Grim Reaper. For the reasons I underlined earlier, it's a business operating cost, particularly in economies like where we're based in, right? You're seeing it right now. They're going to be looking to reduce operating costs. And it is the Grim Reaper, no question about it. Because you can probably do more content with less, right? And also as well, you don't have people, I'm sick, I need to feed the baby today, I can't do this, I bucked my toe on the TV, oh, there's a show on Netflix, what they call it, beef, I need to see. You don't have to contend with all that. It's just sterile, dispassionate, operational.
We're at the crossroads. Yeah, I want to be dramatic when I said that. All right, so I'm on the fence, and the reason I'm on the fence is these models are being created by a tech company thousands of miles away, and I don't know. We generally know how they're created, but we don't know the data sets they're using exactly. We don't know how they're using it, right? So technically journalism, the future of journalism could really be in the hands of Google right now, or OpenAI more specifically, right? And a novel I like to think of is Fahrenheit 451. So this world where basically they burn books, firemen burn books because you don't have books, and the whole purpose of being a human is to ingest the content that the state has presented to you. So there's no independent news or independent source. And one way is we use GPT and other large language models to generate content to fuel our most basic desires. So clickbait in the form of articles and videos and stuff like that, because it's generated videos already. So the quality is down, IQ goes down because we're just ingesting for ingesting's sake to make us buy stuff. So it's about basically economical turnover, right? Or the other way is actual enhancing, where we're running out of data for the models to train. We're reaching that point already. We need new data. So we actually need journalists to create more thought-provoking content, because the AI needs thought-provoking content to get more intelligent. So you could literally have a journalist writing an article about rubber ducks in an amazing way, and that same data in some abstract way is being used to train a surgeon and to make him save a life, which is technically possible because Dr. Mansing said all the data is kind of just sprinkled around and mixed up, so we don't know exactly how. So think about languages that are long lost. There's value in those languages. There's a language where only a few hundred people speak it and they do mathematics in a different way, and it potentially their way of adding and subtracting and doing arithmetic.
We take another break on PBCJ Presents. More after we return. So, what about AI outside of journalism?
I just want to focus on the job loss issues. I think journalists have you may have a head start, because in terms of the technologies that Jovan spoke to, how it aided journalists in the past and presently, I think COVID-19 helped to kind of give us a sense of how we don't necessarily have to be in one place to work.
The whole point of AI is to learn, right? First thing, so yeah, anything you don't know, probably not going to be useful for control in 2 months. Second thing, a lot of creative people who are willing to dedicate their time are basically rebuilding these things from scratch because there's a big open source push. So the idea is democratize the technology, right? So right now, a scammer, I won't name any parish to make it seem like I'm going after any parishes, a scammer could go online right now and with a couple hours and less than $40 US, impersonate you, your voice, how you look, how you talk, your mannerisms, just based on publicly available data on Instagram, and then scale this to hundreds of persons. They could do that right now very quickly, and all they need is just the willingness to do it. So there are free open source versions of all of these things that you can download on the computer right now. I won't name them, but there are tools that we're currently experimenting right now where literally if you want something done, you just tell it what to do. So it's basically a chat GPT for chat GPT. You don't even need to say, so I want to become the best influencer or whatever, and it will just go online and figure things out and create a web page for you and talk to the right people and find people to follow and all that stuff.
Maya, you said two vital things. One, we have to have dominion over this. It's absolutely vital. Think about it, Gunjan, you made the point. Let's just tarry a little while away from journalism. Only a few years ago, we talked about BPOs and how all the young people had to get jobs in BPOs. AI destroyed that. Talk about Grim Reaper, that's over. Anyone tells you otherwise, in the funk. I'm showing my age with that line, right? But it destroyed it. And as far as the industry is concerned, you raised another point. We've got to get people in the industry to focus around critical thinking, how you apply it. But there's also a challenge, and I say to my staff too, I'm not going to be displaced by a computer or by AI, but that's just maybe arrogance. I'll find a way, because at the end of the day, I have to revert to my natural skills. Jovan made a point with business reporting. So did George about the estimates. We have to break that down. He would recall, even at the Gleaner, you get the thick yellow book, Jesus, Garfield breathing down your neck, you want to produce 2 stories for business, right? All right, you got deadlines to meet. You're right, that application helps you. We have to have dominion, you're absolutely right.
So, in the area of AI, do we throw our hands up and go with the flow?
Many of us are parents. We have to control that. We can't just say, as you said, give it up and just defer to a greater power. We have to control that. We have to be able to monitor that for future generations.
You can't restrict everybody from using the internet. There are ways to stop the usage. And yeah, regimes can stop people from accessing the internet, but there are fine ways around it. So it's not to say that we need to be democratic in AI just to share with everybody. The thing is, we need individuals who are intelligent and who are upright citizens figuring out the best way to protect us from the bads. A lot of people using these tools have no idea how it even works. They're putting their personal data in it and not realizing they're sharing the data with other countries freely to be shared, and they have no idea what's going on behind the curtain. We need the government involved. We need regulations involved. But to say that you can't fully stop it, but the idea is if we incentivize people, because not everybody commits crime, right? Not because we have a society in place and there's a invisible contract that we all respect each other and we don't really want to do harm. So people have bad days, but you don't necessarily go out and think to do something bad to somebody else, hopefully. So it's the same thing with AI. AI is just a tool that has amazing capabilities. It's just we need to ensure it's used for the benefit of what we're doing. But it's moving so fast and it's so easy to utilize these tools that putting restrictions is something that should be prioritized by the government right now. We're not controlling these tools right now. We don't have a seat at the table. So we are using tools created by persons in other countries in a way that they intended for us to use them. And in most cases, they didn't really prioritize our data in there. So we have to get involved. So it's more, we need to put regulations in place, but at the same time ensure Jamaicans or Caribbeans, Latin Americans are involved in creating these tools so that we can protect ourselves from them. If we don't, we're going to have a situation where we're really controlled by another country. And at that point, it's almost over, because they'll be able to manipulate the masses, or they won't even consider things that affect us. Very basic things that haven't even occurred to them.
And that is it for this episode of PBCJ Presents. I have been your host, Maya Chung. Our topic has been, is AI a threat to journalism? The Globe observed World Press Freedom Day on May 3rd. The Press Association of Jamaica, PAJ, staged a forum on the issue, ventilating whether or not AI is more menace than value-added tool. Thank you for watching. Remember that we want your engagement. Please follow us on our socials, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at PBCJamaica, and email us your feedback at pbcjpresents@pbcjamaica.org. Stay tuned, we have more great programming coming up.